Hey, folks, welcome back to The Human Practitioner. I've got Mhanu Boulengier, former Marine, back again with me. As I probably said last time, we're going to have a number of episodes with him because he's got such an interesting story, both from his own personal experiences and then what brought him to doing what he's doing for other folks today. So, Manu, great to have you back again, buddy.
Thank you, Greg. Thank you for having me back so I can share
Yeah,
my story and I just hopefully spread some good knowledge out there for the rest of the world.
yeah, very exciting stuff that I've heard from you so far. So, um, yeah, let's go for it.
Sounds good. So as I said in my last episode, former Marine, I got hurt in Iraq. I really got tossed around and ended up with a bulging disc between my L4 L5. And well, during my time overseas in Iraq, I was just told by the corpsman that I got a pulled muscle. Here's some Motrin and some water, and keep on trucking. And yeah, and it just got worse and worse and worse. And they said, "Oh, back muscle takes a long time to heal. Here's more Motrin. Here's more water." And yeah, and I kind of lived with that for my entire duration while I was being deployed in Iraq for 6 months. And when I got back, I finally went down to the hospital and got some imaging done. And they noticed that my back was really tweaked and out of whack. And right away, like there was really no alternative. Right away, they looked at the MRI and they said, "Oh my God, are you in pain?" And I said, "Yeah, for the last 6 months." Marine Corps mentality, adapt and overcome. So, I've learned how to live with the pain. And they said, "But you need to come in for surgery next week." And I thought, "Oh wow, like okay, like what's happening?" They kind of told me what I needed to get done and what they were going to do, and yeah, and there was no alternatives, right? It was just surgery. And as a Marine, you get told something and you just go do it. So the following week, I showed up at the hospital. They did the surgery. They removed the bulging disc between my L4 L5. The doctor later on kind of contradicted himself, but he never ended up putting a drain in. Later on, he had told me when in the medical field, they say when they remove something out of your body is going to replace it with fluid. So a lot of times I like to put a drain in. In my case, he said my area looked dry and no need for a drain. So 5 days after being released from the hospital, I was at home. I woke up and I was completely paralyzed. Most scariest moment of my life, just not having any feeling from the waist down. What is happening? So I got rushed out to the hospital and they took an MRI and they noticed I had a baseball-sized hematoma build up in that surgery site because there was no drain. And so, yeah, big giant blood clot had accumulated and pressed down so far on my sciatic nerve that I lost all feeling. And so I had one of two options. It was live with it for the next 6 months in a wheelchair, and it will slowly dissolve, hopefully, they said. Or we can go in the same exact site, cut it open again, take your spine and all your nerve endings out, remove the hematoma, and then put you back together. So I went for the second option. And yeah, I woke up with an epidural the second time, so it's definitely not a fun feeling. You can't feel the rest of your body, and I had a catheter in that was kind of odd. Never had one of those before, and so I made a recovery from that over the last next couple of years after that, and I was able to just be mobile again and be pain free. But it really only took the pain away just minorly for a few years. After about 5, 6, 7 years, the pain started coming back, but this time it went up to my L3, L4, and so at this time I didn't know what to do. I went and sought help with the VA, which I thought were the professionals. They know what they're doing, and yeah, they recommended right away a surgery, and so let's go in there. I didn't mind surgeries really because I was like, yeah, man, I get pain medicine. I get a lot of it, so it's a legal prescription. And so I did surgery number three, and unfortunately on surgery number three, they messed up. They ended up dropping a tiny, tiny fragmentation the size of the sand kernel accidentally in my L4 nerve canal. When they did a back surgery, they told me, "You're inverted, so your head is down and your face that way." And then they cut open your back and they pull the spine out and they pull the nerve endings out. They fix whatever and they put it back in. During that process, a little fragmentation had dropped in the L4 nerve canal. They put everything back together. So when I woke up from the anesthesia and all the nerve block wore off, I was in excruciating pain. They had to hold me down. I was in that much pain. I couldn't even lay still. So they doped me up and figured out that they dropped something and they said surgery number 4. We got to go get that out now. So same procedure, they got it out, but because of all the going in and out and all the cutting that they did, it was a lot of nerve damage. So when I woke up, I had a lot of residual nerve damage in my left leg. It took a long time to rehabilitate that and be able to get feeling back and being able to walk normal again. I had a walker with the little tennis balls at the bottom of it. I had one of those, like one of my best friends for probably a year or two. And then I was going to physical therapy. I was addicted to the OxyContin. I was very suicidal because I just wasn't myself anymore. I couldn't be mobile anymore. I used to be super fit and I did amateur bodybuilding. And I was in the gym all the time. I was a personal trainer back in the day. And yeah, how dilapidating it was now not being able to move around and seeing myself just not being of service to my family or to myself. And so yeah, that's the time that I really went down the road of suicidal ideation and just thinking about it and the medicine obviously the prescription medication I was on didn't help nothing at all. And yeah, one day I was watching a YouTube video with Steve-O from the Jackass Boys and him and this other guy named Danny Way were going down to Medellin, Colombia to get some stem cells injected into them. And I've never even heard of stem cells. I've been going to the doctors for 20 years and had all these surgeries and never even been exposed to the word stem cells. And so I was watching this video with these two celebrities going down there, and they were getting stem cells injected because Danny Way is a professional skateboarder or BMX guy and has broken every bone in his body. Same thing with Steve-O with doing all these crazy videos back in the day, and so their bodies are dilapidated and need some revitalization. And so they go and get stem cells injected, and I say, wow, is that really an answer? Is that a solution? Because at that time I was so depressed, and when I was going down to my physical therapy and I was, doing my stretches and my exercises, the pain was just so bad that I asked my therapist, what can I do to alleviate some of this pain? And he said nothing. You just got to stretch every day and do yoga every day until you're 100 years old. And I thought there's no way. There's got to be a better answer, and it can't be surgery and it can't be drugs. So what is it? And then I was watching this video about these stem cells and that learning that stem cells regenerate whatever is broken in the body and that we carry stem cells ourselves. But the older that you are, the less effective that your own stem cells are. It's like a battery, right? When you're born, it's like you are a lithium ion fully charged battery. That's how you can look at the stem cells. And then by the time you hit 45 years of age, it's like that battery is halfway depleted, right? So it's not as effective no more. And so about 15 or 20 years ago here in the United States, it was legal to get what's called gummy stem cells injected into yourself. And those are stem cells that come from a baby's umbilical cord or placenta. And these, like I said, are like fully charged stem cells. But because they work so well and they're so effective, the healthcare industry right away said, "Oh, no more," because people are now getting better, and so they don't need the need for medications, the physical therapy, and all this other stuff. So, so they in America they made it so where you can only use gummy stem cells from a baby's placenta or umbilical cord if it's your own baby, so not somebody else's baby. So, but that's only in America. So you have this company that was advertised on this YouTube video with Steve-O called Bio Accelerator, and this is a huge American-based company based out of Phoenix, Arizona, but operates in Medellin, Colombia, because of the laws. And so they service all your UFC fighters and NFL players, and they really got a 5-star service, but also with a 5-star price. At the time, I was so at the end of my road, and I didn't know what to do. My stepfather, my whole life, I consider him my real father. He had just passed away and left me a small inheritance of about $30,000. I've always wanted the 1969 Corvette Stingray with the T-tops, and so I thought now I finally had that money, but my back is really dilapidated, and I need a new back. And so I looked into these stem cells, and yeah, the cost for these stem cells was about $30,000 for to get them injected into your back so they can regenerate your back. And yeah, it was kind of an easy decision, right? My back is going to last me a lot longer than that Corvette is, and so I decided to invest into this protocol. And I paid the 30,000. I got a veteran discount actually for being a veteran, so it reduced down to about 24,000. I was able to bring my own imaging down with me. I already had MRIs done and X-rays, and so I just grabbed all of that stuff from the Veterans Administration and brought that down with me down to Medellin. But the cool part about this whole procedure is that it's not just a one and done. It's a 6 month protocol. And so for 3 months, you have to be on a very strict diet. And that is to reduce your own body's inflammation naturally. That way, the stem cells will bypass inflammation and go straight to the part of your body that's broken or needs more attention. So if you have high inflammation, the stem cells will attack that as well, but you don't want that. So if you can reduce your own body's inflammation by forms of eating and dieting, then you're 10 steps ahead of the game. And so you get a team of nutritionists, you get a team of dietitians, you get a concierge team, you get a team of doctors, you get a 5-star hotel, and you get all the workups. Because this is a company that caters to the celebrities, which I had no idea. I thought it was just one company, and I just went with them. Um, so every week you're on Zoom calls and they really teach you a lot about nutrition. And one of the first things they told me is like, do you drink coffee? And I said, yeah, about a cup or two a day. And they said, no more. Coffee is the number one agricultural crop in the world that contains the most amount of chemicals after it's been processed. Because it's such a rich crop, so they do anything to protect it. So that was the first thing, no more coffee. And so, okay, I cut out the coffee. And then I went on what's called a plant-forward diet. So it means it's pretty much just whole food. Whole food, red meat once a week if you want, but it has to be pasture raised, organically fed, humanely butchered, the whole 9 yards. Once a week you can have that type of meat. And that's making sure you don't take in any of the antibiotics and any of the cortisone and adrenaline that animal had to go through when it got butchered or during its life cycle. And so you can have fish or chicken or chicken again only if it's pasture raised, organically fed. Fish only if it's out of a river or a lake, and it can only be wild caught, not out of the ocean, because the ocean contains too much mercury, right? So you only want wild caught Alaskan salmon or trout. So that was pretty easy. And yeah, and then whole fruit and vegetables, right? So you had to do that for 3 months, which I did. And yeah, in those 3 months, I already started feeling better, right? I used to get up and my body was pretty inflamed because I really didn't pay no attention to what I ate. I kind of just ate whatever felt great or tasted great, but never really looking at a nutrition label. So when I would used to get up out of bed, I would get out of bed all stiff and and groaning. 3 months later, now I'm getting out of bed pretty easily, and I'm like, wow, like it's the food, right? And so every week I had some kind of nutrition class. Like one of the nice things I learned was that if you consume a goblet of pure cacao, which is 70% cacao or more, it increases your natural stem cell production by 30 to 40%. And so that's just a goblet of dark chocolate every day. All right. And so I love chocolate. So yeah, I can throw that into my diet. So yeah, it was just such an informative way of learning everything about nutrition and seeing my body changing. Not even having to go to the gym and just all of a sudden getting definition again and seeing muscle tone, feeling better, getting more energy, not having so much brain fog anymore. My thinking is so rapidly clear, and man, I started feeling really amazing. And so now it's time to go down to Medellin, Colombia. Always my favorite place to go. The country is full of culture and people, and it's cheap and beautiful. So I get to go for 8 days down there to Medellin and do this protocol. And I get down there and I get a driver to pick me up in a limo and take me out to my hotel. It's a 5-star suite, right attached to the mall. And the first day you get there, they give you IVs with stem cells in them, and they give you IVs with vitamins in them. But they also start a hyperbaric chamber protocol, which is a very important key component to stem cells. So I had a buddy of mine who did stem cells and then didn't do the hyperbaric treatment and didn't get the effects like I did. Because when you get these new stem cells into the body, they need to be fully oxygenated with new, fresh oxygen. And the best way to do that is to go into a hyperbaric chamber. And so every day you go in there for about, give or take, an hour or so. And you sit on some IVs for about an hour with some vitamins. Yeah, and that's pretty much your protocol every single day. And then halfway through, that's when the big protocol was, where I had to go through anesthesia, because they had to inject 750 million new gummy stem cells into my spine. Now, the spine is like a closed loop circuit. And so you have that operating on spinal fluid, which has very little blood inside of it. So very little stem cells get inside of that. That's why my back was really never regenerating on its own. Um, what they did is, and I don't remember the exact number, but for example, they took out 5 millimeters of spinal fluid and then replaced it with 5 millimeters of stem cell fluid containing those 750 million new stem cells. Um, that procedure really only took about 20 minutes or so. They woke me up from the anesthesia, and I felt like Superman. And they told me this is going to happen. Um, they're going to have to wheelchair you all the way back to your room, and then you're going to have to lay flat for 6 hours. You cannot move, because everything has to settle in. But when I woke up, I said, man, I could run, I could sprint to my room, and I can do somersaults. Right? I was so full of energy. It felt amazing. I didn't even feel no pain in my back. I didn't feel like I had a procedure. I lay down in my room for 6 hours during the middle of the day, which was the most difficult thing to do. Just laying there, while you're in a different country and you don't even feel bad. And then, and then the next day I woke up and then I was really, really stiff. I could really feel the injection site in my lower back. I had made a friend in Medellin, Colombia, and he was very holistic. He taught me a lot about nutrition and bacteria in the stomach, and how like how kefir works, for instance, how it's a probiotic and you can make it yourself. I make it every day now. And this guy took me for a walk for about 10 hours through Medellin, and that really just walked all the pains and gripes out of my back. And after 10 hours, I felt great. And so the following day, you do some more hyperbaric treatments and some more stem cell IVs. You get a city tour, so you get to see what the city is like. The following day, I jumped off of the mountain and went parasailing, and it was amazing. And then I went home, and then people asked me, well, did it work? Right? Well, for the next 3 months after that, you still got to follow this protocol. You still got to eat healthy, right? And so I was already used to it for 3 months, so it became a lifestyle for me. It's not something I have to work towards anymore. It's easy to eat an apple. It's easy to eat a handful of nuts and not order pizza and heat up a hot pocket or something like that. So yeah, every day after that procedure, I can say I felt a sand kernel better. Right? After about a month or so, like, I'm not assisting myself to get up out of bed. I'm not assisting myself getting up out of a chair. I don't need my walker anymore. I'm starting to walk without any kind of assistance. I can go upstairs without holding on to a railing. Um, 3 months later, I mean, I'm running again. All right, and it felt amazing, man. And um, I need to back up a little bit into the story to tell you a little bit of how I got convinced, because $30,000 was a big chunk of money for me, and I didn't want to invest into something that it's 50-50. I don't know if it's going to work, right? And so I had spoken to a guy who was an electrician, and he had fallen from a power line about 150 feet down and became a quadriplegic. So he could only move his head. And 4 stem cell therapies later at the same place, he had full mobility in his upper body, and he had little light tremors in his legs already. And he said, I'm next week I'm going in for number 5, and I'll guarantee you that my legs will be working after the next session. So that just gave me incredible hope. Um, I don't know if you ever watch UFC or know about Matt Hughes, who is a Hall of Famer. Matt Hughes, he's a badass in the UFC. I didn't know, but this guy got hit in his pickup truck by a train, and it severed his spinal column, I believe, and he also became a quadriplegic. Went to the same facility. Several treatments later, this guy can walk up the stairs without holding onto a railing again. Right? He has a little bit of a speech impediment, but he's back in the gym, not as a fighter, but just rehabilitating and doing it on his own. And he would never be able to do this without stem cells. Right? And so that whole journey, it just taught me so much about nutrition, about what we put into our body and how do we put it into our body. Learning about seed oils and, how they become rancid when we cook with them, learning about, how to read a nutrition label, and then I started getting caught on to water fasting. It's just drink water for days, put a little bit of sea salt in there for electrolytes, and just learning that the body doesn't need to eat 3 times a day. We're just programmed to think that we need to have breakfast, lunch, and dinner, right? But the body goes through so many transformations, and it heals itself once you stop feeding it a bunch of junk, So that was just such a wonderful experience. And I can say now my back is 85 to 90% better again. I can lift, I can run, I can jump. And several years ago, I was worried that I was going to be in a wheelchair, for the rest of my life. So, I really want to say stem cells really fixed my back, it fixed my life, and alongside of that, just nutrition, is going to help me for the rest of my life. And there's a saying that goes along with that says, if you treat food as medicine, you won't have to eat medicine as food. So let that one sink in with everyone.
That's a big one. Yeah, it's you started talking, I think after we recorded last week, about the importance of diet and all that sort of stuff. I think it's just one of those things that I had to learn that at some point too, that it's like, just because it's in the grocery store doesn't mean it's actually food, and your body's going to be able to use it and nourish itself and rebuild itself and all that stuff. So, um, yeah, it's pretty awesome that they didn't just try to sell you a treatment on its own, that they actually wanted to help you get educated about how to fuel your body appropriately.
Yeah, and this is really a good example. You pay for what you get, right? So that friend of mine that I mentioned, he went down to Tijuana and got these stem cells done for $9,000, right? But it was just a complete waste. He didn't get the information, he didn't get the knowledge to go along with it and the protocol, he didn't get the hyperbaric treatment. And so going back to like being uh, educated on nutrition, right? I was a personal trainer for a long time. I kind of thought I knew what macro and micronutrients were and how to count your calories and that sort of thing. I was watching Netflix a few years back, and there was a show called Game Changers, I think it was. It was all about the plant movement, the plant-based diet movement, about just cut out meat out of your diet. And so this show really caught my attention, and Arnold Schwarzenegger was on there, and I think the Dallas Cowboys or somebody was on there, and so I was like, wow, if it really helped these guys, like I should try this. And so I went to my doctor and I did a full 18-panel blood screen and just got all my results because I was going to try to go plant based for 3 months, and never done this before. And then after 3 months, I was going to do another blood panel. And so I did the blood panel. The next day, I go into Sprouts or Alberts, I think it was Albertsons, one of the grocery stores down here. And okay, how do you do plant-based? But at that time, they started coming out with these little green tags everywhere. Plant-based, plant-based. This is plant-based, organic, plant-based. And so I started looking around. I was like, hey, this is pretty easy. Like they got ground beef and it's plant-based. Wow. And then when you make it, it tastes just like ground beef, right? And so I'm like, oh, I can do this, right? Everything is plant-based. So, I'm paying more than normal, right? But now I got everything that's processed in my house. Everything is processed pretty much, right? Except for a little bit. But it's all plant-based. So in my eyes, from the show, it's like, hey, this is going to help me. 3 months later, I go and I say, okay, it's time to do the blood panel. And I can tell you, Greg, like my shit was all over the charts, man. I was so unhealthy, man. Like, I mean, it was just everywhere. And come to find out that yes, plant based is great for you if you use the right ingredients. If you look at some of these plant based processed ingredients that they're using in the store, it's got 5 different kind of seed oils in it, right? So the inflammation in my body was just going up like crazy, right? It was just full of rancid seed oils. And so, yeah, I never did that again. Right away, I got away from that, and that's when I learned about the plant forward diet. Right? It's just like, hey, you know what? You can do plant based, right? But you can eat meat just a little bit once in a while, but just make sure you source the right kind of food, right? Make sure that like for instance, if you eat anything organic, um, you don't have to buy everything organic. They say there's like the Heart 12 or something like that. It's like bananas and avocados. Anything that you peel, you don't need organic. You can peel it and throw the peel away, right? But anything that's a berry, blueberry, strawberry, blackberry, anything like that, you spend the extra dollar and go organic, right? They've done a study where they take non-organic strawberries, juiced them, and then tested the concentration of that juice, and it was high enough to respray all the strawberries again and have the concentration of the pesticide be high enough to keep the pest away, right? So, spend a couple of extra bucks, right? Get the knowledge. Like, know, for instance, that organic frozen blueberries are frozen the minute that they're picked, so they keep their freshness, right? And so, when we educate ourselves with the knowledge, right, then we can really benefit our body from it. And I can tell you, Greg, man, I don't go to the gym, I don't work out, but my body is I mean probably 4 or 5, 6% body fat. I have so much energy, I can think straight, I have good sleep, right? When it's light out, I'm out, right? So get outside. Yeah, and this all just starts with nutrition. But it's difficult, just like the first week of going back to the gym, right? And everybody that's been to the gym knows what I'm talking about. That first week, I mean, you got to drag yourself to go to the gym. Same thing in your diet. You just have to stop buying all the shit that you used to buy and just do everything different, right? And go back to our roots. Go back to the way that we used to eat. And if you really, really, really like something and you know it's not good in the store, find out what the ingredients are and source all the proper ingredients and make it yourself, right? I make the best chocolate in the world and it's 100% organic and healthy for you, right? I make the best ice cream in the world, right? And I use all raw products. So, do everything in moderation, source your local products if you can, and then, yeah, and then retrain the brain to think that, hey, eat when you need to, not when you want to, not when you're bored.
Yeah, that's a good one. Seems like it's easy to, if people are bored or depressed or anxious or whatever it is, food is often one of those things um, that creeps in to fill that space.
Yeah, definitely. And same thing, right? Another cool and a good rule of thumb is don't eat when it's dark. Right? So only eat when it's light outside. So and it's called intermediate fasting, right? Like so, start eating maybe from like 10 o'clock in the morning until 4 o'clock in the afternoon at 6 o'clock, and just only eat between those periods. And I'll challenge anyone, try that for 30 days, and you don't even have to eat the best type of food. Like just try to eat within that time frame and see what your body will do. It's gonna go through amazing transformation.
Yeah, that's a big one. And, you mentioned the pesticides in the strawberries. I heard about that too. And uh, I think it's glyphosate, is that pesticide that's, liquid that they spray on things. And it's wild too, because when you dig into that sort of stuff, then you find out how terrible that is for us. And then you see out there that are people that are actually putting information out saying, "Oh, glyphosate's no big deal. This is just something that's passed on to scare us or whatever." And it's like, well, if you actually think about it, pesticides are meant to kill other living organisms. And are we really supposed to believe that as another living organism, it's not going to have any effect on us? It's just so wild to see all of the propaganda really that's out there around food.
Yeah, and I want to go back to like food is medicine, right? Use it sparingly, use it when you're supposed to. Everything out there can and will heal us, right? We just got to know how to use it. And so, a lot of times we are so programmed or influenced, I should say, for convenience, right? So if I got a headache, it's so easy just to go to the store across the street and get a Tylenol. All right. We don't see what that Tylenol does on the insides of us, but it takes our headache away. All right. Now, if I were to tell you, hey, man, Craig, you can walk maybe a half mile down the street and pick a dandelion and eat that thing, and it'll take your headache away and it'll save the insides. Do you want to do that? No. Right. Nobody wants to walk a half a mile. Right. Like that's a huge inconvenience, right? But it's gonna take your life. And so, Mother Nature, Pachamama, as I call her, she's got all of our remedies, right? And you just got to find out what they are. And this goes back to our ancestral ways. I mean, we've used nature as long as we've been around to heal ourselves, to feed ourselves, and let's go back to like, for instance, cacao, all right, which I mean we call it chocolate today, right? Now, any type of chocolate that you buy in the store is horrible for you. All right, most of the time it's horrible for you. It's filled with cane sugar and it's got all kinds of other kind of oils and emulsifiers in there, right? When you look at cacao is used for centuries, all right? And it's not wasn't only used as currency back in the day, but it was also used as a medicine, right? And so for many different symptoms that people have, you can use cacao, right? But I wouldn't use a Snickers bar or a Hershey's today, right? Because
Right.
that's not the same thing, and we just look at it as like, oh, that's our chocolate. The same thing counts for our coffee, all right? Our coffee was used all over the world, right? Especially in Greece, right? In Greece and in Turkey. They use coffee and they use coffee grinds to tell the future and that sort of thing, right? But look at Starbucks nowadays, right? Our ancestors be like, that's not coffee, right? Or that's not the main purpose of how we use coffee. And this goes on and on with many, many, many different kinds of medicines and plants that are out there. One of them that I'd like to throw out there is tobacco. Tobacco has been so demonized because of cigarette and smoking and that sort of thing. But one of the things that a lot of people don't know and that people don't touch on is that tobacco has a high concentration of nicotine. And nicotine is one of these molecules that is super beneficial for our body, right? So I would agree with anyone out there. Smoking a cigarette is not the greatest for you because of the carcinogenics, and you're getting like 500 different kinds of carcinogenics that are transformed from lighting that cigarette, right? But the nicotine molecule that's being absorbed into the body is great for the human receptors, right? And it can fight off and it's proven to fight off like I believe 37 or 39 different kinds of influenza viruses, right? Nicotine is used to help and alleviate arthritis, right? And not by the form of smoking cigarettes, but you can use nicotine in many other different ways, right? Did you know that nicotine is in eggplant, right? Or it's in tomatoes, right? Like it's in our nightshade vegetables. So nicotine is actually a really good molecule, right? And so, but if you look today and you ask, your average person out there, hey man, what do you think about tobacco? And it'd be a big old, that's cancerous,
Right.
but in all reality, like nicotine or tobacco has been around for a very long time and it's helped many, many people heal. I have gone down to South America to get more acquainted with some of these plants and some of these medicines and how can we heal from them. Um, I went down to Ecuador and I sat for the first 5 days. I had to sit in what's called a tobacco cleanse. And so they had all pure natural tobacco. And they said this tobacco is so powerful and it can heal on so many different levels that you can heal your animals, you can heal your plants with it, or you can heal yourself. So if you ever have a plant that has a disease or something like that, get some tobacco, soak it in water, and then feed it to your plants and watch your plants, refurbish again. And so I had to drink tobacco for 5 days. Every morning I had to drink a cup of tobacco water. Several hours later, I had to take that same type of water and then inhale it through the nose. And then at the end of the day, I had to do a combination of what's called hape, and it's a tobacco inhalant with a mixture of plant ashes and tobacco, and then you inhale that through the nose. And I did that for 5 days, and it was to detoxify and cleanse out everything on the inside of me. And yeah, it wasn't pleasant. It wasn't very fun. And it does not taste good at all. But after 5 days, I felt so light out. My body was operating so well, and yeah, I think I lost a few pounds even throughout the process. But for the next couple of weeks after that, I could really feel the difference. And this is indigenous, all organic, natural tobacco. I mean, it came out of the ground, it was picked, and then it was dried, and then it was delivered to me. So there was no chemical process. There was nothing in or on it. And so pure tobacco is really a medicine.
Crazy, man. And another thing on the diet as well that we've spoke about before is that again, I didn't arrive at eating well and all that sort of stuff that people probably look at me like I'm crazy now until I had health issues of my own that scared me into like I better clean my diet up or whatever. At least this is going to help. And it's like one of those things that you need to do it for a while and invest into that process, as you've alluded to as well, in order to get the results. You don't eat a single meal that's good or eat for a single day and feel better. And it's funny too that often, people who try to shift their diet, I think in a more dramatic fashion from say the standard American diet and then eat healthier, often they feel worse temporarily because their body is having withdrawals from all the chemicals and stuff like that that they're used to. So they think like, oh no, I felt terrible, eating this or that way. I tried, it didn't work for me. I went back to the way that it is. And I mean, it's just like going to the gym. I think I've used this before on here is that you don't go to the gym, for the first week, as you mentioned before, and you come out in great shape. You're probably going to feel worse, for at least a week, maybe two, maybe longer. But it's just like anything else. You invest in the right things for yourself for long enough, and then you're like, oh, like this is now this makes sense. And I think if only people knew, if we were taught at some point in an education system that our cells have to rebuild themselves from the food that we eat. It's not just, I remember a buddy of mine who I went to the Marine Corps with saying, I was in high school with him. He was like, oh, it's all going to the same place anyway, kind of an excuse for eating junk food. And it's like, well, right, it's going into your cells before it's going into the toilet. So it's just wild, and now I see people walking around who are 50, 60 years old, and it just looks like they hurt. You can see that whether they're overweight or they're inflamed, or you can tell that their nervous system is just like shot, or whatever it is. People are walking around sick, and nothing in the mainstream media is saying, except maybe for a few exceptions, like, hey, look, you really got to, phase out a lot of these things that you're doing. Here's what we've deemed to be normal at this point. This is not normal at all whatsoever. You shouldn't be walking around, with your back hunched at 50, 60 years old and like barely able to make it through your life, in a bunch of pain and stuff like that. So, I could obviously go on for hours, but yeah, great example of.
Hey, Greg, I just want to piggyback off of that. Everything is about education, right? And knowledge. The wisdom will get you where you need to go. And when you go to the doctors, like my entire 20 years of going to the doctors, I was never taught or talked about nutrition, right? It was always try this medicine, try that medicine, or do some PT or a little exercise or whatever. But I was never talked to about nutrition, right? And then when we're talking about nutrition, then we need to know what they're talking about and how are they interpreting things and what kind of wording and marketing are they using, right? And so just like my example of trying to go plant based, right? Like just because it says plant based doesn't mean it's great for you. Just because it says organic, it doesn't mean it's good for you, right? Like I'll give you another example. I used to eat organic ice cream, right, at 9 o'clock at night, right? Like, oh, it's organic, but it's organic, right? But yeah, so what? It's got organic cane sugar, At 9 o'clock at night, you probably shouldn't have, organic cane sugar or any type of sugar. And so, you know, um, when you go to the store, I don't know if you ever looked at like the egg section, like for instance at a health food store, right? Like at Sprouts, for instance. Like you got organic eggs, and then you got cage-free eggs, and then you got free-range eggs, and then you got pasture-raised eggs, right? So what is the difference, right? And so when you look at the definition, for instance, for a cage-free egg, right, it just requires that the chicken is not in the cage, all right? And so I've been into these places where they had just warehouses with chickens that are just shoulder to shoulder, right? Yeah, they're not in the cage, but you know that chicken never sees sunshine, right? It never sees any kind of good feed, right? It's just a horrible environment, you know. And now you're eating the byproduct. You're eating that either that chicken or that egg, right? And it's a better option than the cage chicken, but still not the best option, right? And so now you go to like, for instance, an organic or a cage-free egg that's organic fed and you know all kinds of stuff like that. Where the criteria, for instance, for one of those is like that they get like 10 by 10 feet of outside space, but for like 5,000 chickens. So how many of those chickens actually get to go outside and get that sunshine for a minute or two, right? And so what you really are trying to look for is animals that are raised in a pasture, right? That actually get to eat the grass and eat the bugs that are walking around, that they get the sunlight, you know, on their skin or on their fur or on their feathers. That's where all the real nutrients come into play, right? And so for me, like I have my own chicken, right? So I know what goes into my eggs, right? I know what goes into my like I have a RO system, a reverse osmosis system, right? So I know what's in my water. I know my water is clean, right? I test my water. So it's important that we really find out all these little minor details, right? And when you first get started, it can be overwhelming. There's so much information out there. But I just say you just make one change at a time, all right? So instead of drinking tap water, I encourage everybody to stop drinking tap water. Even if you have like a Brita filter or something like that, they don't really work well. Um, Stop drinking out of plastic, you know, like those kind of things. I encourage people just to start with those type of little things, right? Because water is something that we all drink, we all need it every single day. If we can just make a little change on that, then we can just build after that and keep building from that. And I've been on this road for like 10 years now, and I'm still like figuring out little things here and there and dialing things in. But the more you do it, the more it just becomes a lifestyle, the more comfortable you with it, you know, and the more your taste buds change actually too, right? There's a lot of things I didn't used to like, you know. All the things I eat now I used to never eat because I never liked them before, you know. And so I think they say every 5 or 7 years you change buds, you know, your taste buds they change a little bit, and so I can attest to that. And you just got to keep on doing it and stick with it.
Yeah, that's a big one. And funny too, you mentioned the pasture raised eggs. You know, it's a shame that these companies out there that say start as, you know, small family companies or something like that, and their labeling is accurate and it is honest and they're doing business with integrity. Well, then they get big enough and then they sell out to some, you know, firm and they make it go public or whatever. And then they're no longer, you know, they're finding ways around saying, okay, well, we have to meet this definition, so we're going to find ways to feed the chickens that are pasture raised things that they shouldn't be eating. Like you say, they should be digging bugs up out of the ground and all that sort of stuff. I think it's Vital Farms is one of these companies that went public. Of course, a public company is responsible to their shareholders, not to their customers necessarily. So they've been putting, I don't even know what this is, but like, I guess putting marigold in like their chickens feed or whatever it is. So that's like, it's making the yolk more orange, which is, you know, we're supposed to associate a more orange yolk with being healthier. And it's just so wild that they try to fit themselves into these definitions, or they just change the definitions, you know, for what these words even mean. You know, meanwhile, we're thinking that we're eating the good stuff or whatever, but they might be feeding them corn and soy and stuff like that, which chickens don't naturally eat. But if that's readily available, they're going to eat it. Another thing that I find funny too on egg labels is vegetarian feed. It's like, you mean to tell me that a chicken with a hard beak on it is supposed to eat vegetarian? It's just, I don't know, man. Like at some point, like I think I've just kind of gotten past the point of being like irritated about that stuff. And it's like, it's just kind of comedy. It's just like a big circus now,
Yeah.
with all this stuff out there. It's so much out there to deceive us.
Yeah, and I wanna do a shout out to one of those apps out there, right? That really can help you while you're in the grocery store. It's called Yuka, right? Yuka, and you install this app for free, and all you do is you have to scan the barcode on whatever product that you're holding up, and it's gonna come back with a rating for you, right? From 0 to 100. It might say 40 and have a red dot next to it, and it'll say bad, right? And then you can scroll down and see why it's bad, right? And it'll say like additives or whatever. And then you can click on the additives and it'll break it down what additives are in there and what health causes it or what health concern it causes. And then you can scroll down a little bit further and then you can find a similar product, right? That is even, that has a better score, right? And so, for instance, I took a Gatorade one time and I scanned it, right? And it came back, I think like 1 out of 100, you know? It was bad, right? But everybody out there, including athletes, right, are advertising it like get your electrolytes in. Like this is the best sports drink. It's quenching your thirst, right? And so, well, you look on this app and then you scroll down and and then it says like a recommendation. I don't know, water, right? It's better for you. So this app can really help you, if you're not really sure on what's good and what's not good for you. It is sometimes a little bit deceiving because beef tallow is a really good alternative cooking method, to eliminate your seed oils, like the vegetable oil or even avocado oil or anything like that. I took a lot with beef tallow, but when you scan the beef tallow, it's gonna say like 10 out of 100, and then it says why, and it's because it's filled with saturated fat, right? And of course, because it's rendered beef fat, right? It's fat, so you kind of got to know just a little bit, but it's such a great help. I teach most of my clients just to kind of use that app if they just don't have no awareness of like what is healthy and what is not. So it can kind of help you in the grocery store.
Hmm. Yeah, that's a big rabbit hole to be able to go down on all that sort of stuff. And I guess one thing you mentioned the beef tallow. I think it's that company Epic uh, that they make like these little meat sticks and all that stuff. I heard that not too long ago they got bought out by General Mills, and then
Yeah,
people were saying that your jar of beef tallow, which it's clear glass in there, they said that it used to stay consistent, and then sometime after General Mills bought the company, like oil would separate from what looked like beef tallow. So people were saying like, what are they doing different? Um, and it could be just the cows are getting different feed or who knows what, but yeah, it's a wild world, man. And I'm sure you're that way with people. Like I've always told people like, hey, look, I've kind of gotten past the point of trying to like purposely say, hey, look, you should really replace what you're eating here, with this and that. Just I pissed enough people off to now it's just like, if you have questions, you can ask. I'll speak about this stuff till I'm blue in the face, only because I've learned from, personal experience and probably thousands of hours now of, researching this stuff. But it's nice, that we can actually be a beacon of light for people and a resource for people. And, rather than having some financial interest that, oh yeah, here's this product, like you should take this product. Meanwhile, we don't actually, take it ourselves or whatever, but we're getting paid to say that. So,
yeah.
um,
I just wanted to say, I have, even this morning, I got another email from a client just saying that, thank you so much for putting the education out there, putting the knowledge out there. I've had several clients just in the last few months being able to change what they were doing into a more natural way, right? I'll give you an example. One guy was taking testosterone shots, right? Nowadays, you can go to the testosterone clinic and they'll tell you you're low on testosterone and you can get a legal prescription to get steroids injected into you. But that's not good for you. But there's alternative methods, right? And so, testicles from a bull, right, are filled with testosterone, right? They nowadays they grind them up and they put them in a powder capsule. You know, you can buy those, right? And those are healthy for you. You gotta pull them out, yeah.
There we go. Yeah. I don't know if you can quite see it there, but yeah.
Yeah, yeah. So, you know, I just wanted to once again reiterate that there is a natural solution for anything and everything out there, right? You just got to do the little bit of research and find out what that natural solution is, right? And then we can actually just reverse everything that we're doing instead of hurting ourselves. We can really just heal ourselves, and then spread
Hmm.
that knowledge and wisdom with everybody else around
Yeah. It's a wild one. You know, funny you bring up the bull testicles. A buddy of mine told me about 4 years ago. He's like, look, dude, if you're going to supplement with one thing, because I've done plenty of supplements and all this stuff throughout the years, he's like, supplement with bull testicle. He's like, just trust me on this one. And I was like, okay, screw it. Like, I'll buy this and check it out. And um, man, I've probably gotten since then, you know, again, this was about 4 years ago, probably about 40 other guys onto those. You know, some of them stuck with it. Some of them, you know, they'd buy like one bottle and just take it for a month and then, you know, forget to order it again or something like that. But it's so huge and it's a natural source, you know, as opposed to TRT, which, you know, I think like the VA will pay for TRT, insurance will pay for TRT and stuff like that. But what they don't tell you is because you're getting it from that source and it's just being injected into your body, is that your body stops producing testosterone. And it sounded like you were about to touch on that. Maybe it's like it can have permanent effects.
it. Yeah.
So yeah, sure. It's easy because you don't need to change anything. You just go to the doctor and you get a shot and you get what you think are supposed to be the results of higher testosterone. Meanwhile, your body is never going to respond properly again. So it's scary stuff out there, man. And I'll tell you what, yeah, just eating a certain way, getting good sleep, working out, supplementing, you know, if people are so brave with bull testicle, I mean, that right there is like, your testosterone is going to go up, you know, if you do all those things.
Yeah, and so you know, it's once again, right, going back to all these holistic and natural remedies to get back online, to get back in track of what we're trying to accomplish. And you know, another great plant or species I wanted to mention was mushrooms. Right, mushrooms have been such a great help in my recovery and in my journey. And I'm talking like, you know, your five main healthy mushrooms out there, right? Like your lion's mane, your reishi, your cordyceps, your chaga. Paul Stamets has a stack out there that I believe it's called the Stamets stack. And for all the people out there that don't know who Paul Stamets is, he's a self-invented, self-made godfather of mushrooms. When he was somewhere in his teens, he developed a huge interest in mushrooms and just dedicated his life to figuring out everything about mushrooms and nowadays bees as well. And yeah, they are such a huge component in our healing journey, right? Not only physically but also mentally, right? So just by consuming lion's mane mushrooms, it just helps alleviate brain fog. So I don't know if you ever catch yourself trying to catch your thought, right? There's some brain fog happening right there. And once I started really getting on this Paul Savage stack of mushrooms, and I started drinking mushroom coffee and that sort of thing, yeah, that kind of all just flushed away. You know, I heard an incredible story from Paul Stamets that I believe his mom called him up one day and said, I have horrible news. You know, I just came back from the doctor and they found 5 lumps in my chest. You know, yeah, what do I do? And he said, Mom, stop doing whatever you're doing right now, and you're going to be on a regimen of lion's mane mushrooms from now on. And I believe, like the story goes, like 3, 4, 5 months later, like the lumps were gone. All right. And so mushrooms are like the decomposers of the world, right? We can use mushrooms to decompose pretty much anything out there in the world, including oil slicks nowadays, right? They can use mushrooms to pull up the oil. And so think about what mushrooms do inside our body, right? They do the same thing. They just accumulate all these toxins and all this stuff that's not supposed to be there, you know, and it gets rid of it, you know. And so, and there's so many different varieties of different mushrooms out there with different purposes. I mean, you know, the list is longer than I know.
Mhm. Yeah, that's some good stuff that he talks about. I've seen some from him as well. But right, Manu, sounds like it's probably pretty good for this round here. Definitely more to chat about in the future. So, final thoughts. Put you on the spot here, real quick.
Yeah, Craig, it was once again, man, it was a nice hour just to be able to get all this information out there and discuss these things. Just a little snippet for next time. Let's go a little bit deeper into these different plant medicines, and how can they help us along our way, physically, mentally, spiritually, mentally especially, And so I want to just share a couple of these great adventures that I was able to go through in my life around the world, and I think it'll be a great podcast for next time.
All right, Manu. Thanks. Appreciate that. Looking forward to it. And thanks everybody for joining us. We'll catch you next time.